Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I am the host of this program. Well, Super Tuesday is over, and Joe Biden made an astonishing comeback. As you know, the first states there, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, didn't do so well. But he won big in South Carolina, and that sort of set the spark. And with Super Tuesday, he carried 10 of the 14 states. So overall, he's got a grand total of 11. Bernie is running second, I believe, with 6. And Mayor Blegovich has 1, and that's Iowa. He barely beat Bernie out in Iowa. But this coming Tuesday is what they call Little Super Tuesday. And of course, the big state up for grabs is Michigan. Now, Bernie won Michigan 4 years ago. He kind of surprised everybody when he beat Hillary in Michigan. And overall, in 2016, Hillary won 28 states, Bernie won 22. So after today, we're at the halfway mark. And Bernie needs Michigan, just as he needed Michigan 4 years ago to get his campaign in gear, really. He needs it now to stay in the running. If Biden does well, which he will probably do, say take 5 out of 7, 6 out of 7, then the race for the Democratic presidential nomination is over. Joe Biden will be the nominee. In fact, I think for all practical purposes, it's probably over right now. I was glad to see Kamala Harris, the junior senator from California, endorsing Biden. And if Biden's campaign and his advisors got any sense at all, she will be his running mate. As I said before, come 2024, we will probably be electing a female president. And when you look at Joe Biden and you look at his age, he's 77. He'll be 81 in 4 years, and probably will not be up to another presidential campaign, which means that his running mate would probably be the Democratic nominee. And I think if we're going to have a woman president, we got to have one that can really do a great job, because she's going to be under an awful lot of pressure. And I think Senator Harris is up to it. She's a junior senator from California. She was the Attorney General in California for something like 12, 13 years before she was elected to the U.S. Senate. And she would be a tremendous factor on the ticket, especially getting the women's vote. Being African American, she certainly would corral that vote. And because she speaks fluent Spanish, I think she would get a huge, huge share of the Hispanic vote. And if I'm campaigning for her, yeah, you bet I am. Because I think a Biden-Harris ticket is what we need to get rid of the bunch of gangsters that are in there now. As you know, if you've been following the news lately, as you know, the Intelligence Committee in a hearing before the Senate outlined information that Russia is still trying to interfere in our presidential election. Naturally, they're favoring Mr. Trump. They're also supporting Bernie Sanders. The idea being that Bernie Sanders is a Democratic nominee, that he will be easy to beat, although he won't admit it, that he would be an easier man for Trump to beat. I think they're well aware that Biden would hammer Trump. Well, the big thing with the Super Tuesday is the number of moderate Democrats that dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden. And I think he has the endorsement of most of the moderate Democrats and the leadership of the Democratic Party. There's no question that he is now the choice to be the nominee in 2020. As I say, for Bernie, Bernie's got to win Michigan. And if he loses Michigan, well, he's pretty much done. I think Bernie hit his peak when he squeaked by in New Hampshire and he won Nevada. I think that's when he peaked. And of course, on Super Tuesday, he did pick up 4 states. He won the home state of Vermont, won that handily. He expected that. But he also won Colorado and Utah, and the big prize, the state of California. He was favored in Texas, but a number of the leading Democrats in Texas came out and endorsed Biden, and the result was that Joe Biden won Texas, which is one of the bigger states as far as delegates are concerned. Joe Biden also won in Massachusetts. Bernie, everybody thought Massachusetts would be a toss-up between Bernie and Senator Elizabeth Warren. And another surprise where he never campaigned, but Biden also won in Maine. Now, Maine was kind of a toss-up. People said, well, it's either going to be Warren or Sanders. But Joe Biden won Maine. So as we go to the Little Super Tuesday, it's going to have, excuse me, a great effect on who the Democratic nominee is going to be. As I say, Bernie has to win it in order to credibly stay in it. Okay, Mississippi, because of the large African American vote, that will go to Joe Biden, no question there. And I think Biden will win at least 5 of the 7, maybe all 7. If he can take Michigan, there's a strong possibility to take all 7. If he does that, Bernie might as well throw in the towel. But I would imagine he will carry on. There are a number of cartoons there. There's one in the Week magazine this week that shows a craft headed for Denmark. And of course the craft is headed east, and Bernie is sitting in the back of the boat with a spyglass looking back to the west. So it's pretty much the story of his campaign. And you know, it's a little different from what it was a week ago. If you remember a week ago, or a little over a week ago, prior to South Carolina, it looked like Bernie was going to be the nominee. The question was, you know, who's going to stop Bernie? He's snowballing toward the Democratic nomination. But these early primaries before Super Tuesday, with the exception of South Carolina, really don't tell you a heck of a lot. Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, somewhat. But it's when you get into South Carolina and get into Super Tuesday with 14 states up for grabs, and Little Super with 7. After today, we'll be halfway there. And if Joe Biden has a substantial lead halfway there, there's pretty much a chance that the other states are pretty much going to be falling in line. There may be some exceptions. Washington State, by the way, presidential primary is today. That is a key state. Mississippi, Michigan is probably number 1. And, well, we'll see what happens tonight. Super Tuesday, I want to, first of all, congratulate the folks that were successful in their bid for public office. And I also want to congratulate the folks that ran. Throwing your hat in the ring, being a candidate, shows you're interested. And it takes a lot of nerve and a lot of courage to put your name up there and see if people are going to support you or go the other way. Excuse me. This year, the Board of Aldermen, 2 incumbent aldermen were defeated. And frankly, it came as a bit of a surprise to me. I thought thought all 5 would probably be reelected. I thought maybe there was just one that might be on the bubble, and that was Alderman Tumola. I thought if anybody were going to break the 5, it would be Sammy Garuso. Well, two of them broke the 5. A gentleman from faculty at Castle and U came in 3rd and Sammy 4th, and an incumbent 5th. Sharon Davis back for her 16th term. That has to be a record. And Paul Clifford is back. Sammy Garuso was on the Board of Aldermen back in the 90s before I went on the board. And he has returned after a long absence. So, you know, things are rotating around. For a while, it looked like youth were going to be a prominent thing on the Board of Aldermen. I'd say 4, maybe 6 years ago. But it seems the city is opting, or at least this last election, are opting for people that have been there before. Paul Clifford, for example, was on the Board of Aldermen. Then he stepped down. He became our Public Works Commissioner. He was on the Select Board in Rutland Town, I believe, for a year, maybe 2 years. Moved back into the city, returned to the Board of Aldermen. And he finished 2nd this time around. So you'll have Sharon Davis, Paul Clifford, 1, 2, and then your 2 newcomers, and then the gentleman that was there before was elected to his 2nd term. As far as Alderman Tumola and my name escapes me right now, you know, they're still young enough they can make a comeback. Maybe try running next year. I know I served 10 years on the Board of Aldermen, ran 8 times, won 5, lost 3. One time by 8 votes. I was elected to 1 term, then I was defeated. Then I came back the following year, and was elected to 3 terms, and then lost by 8 votes. Came back the following year and lost again by a little bit more than 8. I can't remember what it was, but it was around 100. And then I came back again and won. So, you know, you never give up. You just keep in there and keep plugging. And I know the 2 gentlemen that lost their seats were a little upset about it. In fact, Mr. Tumola felt it was the Bernie effect. And I know there was a letter in the paper from the Rutland City Democratic Chair. And I think it was a letter that was uncalled for. I have served as Democratic Chair in the town of Rockingham, and I have served as a Democratic Chair in the city of Rutland. And I have served as Vice Chair on the Democratic Committee for Rutland County. And here in the city, when we run city elections, it's not done by party. You know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But it's not done by party. You vote for the individual. Party lines in the city election don't make any difference. When you run, you take your oath to support the charter of the city of Rutland, not the charter of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Your oath as an alderman and as a school board member is to the charter of the city of Rutland. And you're there to do what is best and support what is best for the citizens of Rutland City. And so the letter put in the paper by the current chair of the Rutland City Democratic Committee, downgrading Alderman Tumola, in my opinion, was uncalled for. You know, if you want to support somebody, put your letter in the paper and support them. But you don't put a letter in the paper knocking somebody because you don't like them personally or whatever. But that is done, and Mr. Tumola was upset, naturally. Talked about the Bernie effect. Well, as I said last time, I voted absentee, and in the Democratic primary, I voted for Joe Biden. I'll make no bones about that. I think we need to make a change. We need to reunite the country, and I think Biden is the man to do it. To pull the nation back together again, get rid of this divisiveness that has developed under Trump, this dishonesty, where it's all right to lie. If the chief executive lies every time he turns around, it's got to be all right for everybody else to lie. Well, that's not the case. And when you take the highest civilian honor in this country and you award it to a scumbag like Rush Limbaugh, and do it at the State of the Union address, I mean, that's taking it way too far. Way, way too far. And for the good of this country, we've got to have a change. And I think if you get the right ticket, it's going to happen. And I think with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, it's going to happen, and going to happen big time. The current president, if you want to look back in history, go back to the 1930s. Go back to Germany. A fellow by the name of Adolf Hitler managed to get himself elected Chancellor of Germany. The president of Germany at that time was a former field marshal in the German army, World War I, Paul von Hindenburg. Well, President Hindenburg died in office. And rather than have an election to elect his successor, Hitler assumed the office. He eliminated it and took the authority himself. And of course, he brought into power his bunch of thugs, Hermann Göring, Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, Erikman, and a number of other his black shirt and brown shirt cronies. And of course, the old thing, was Heil Hitler. Right now, we're hearing slogans of Heil Trump. And he seems to be doing the same thing. You look at his cabinet. He confuses loyalty to him with patriotism. Being loyal to Donald Trump doesn't make you a patriot. In fact, in many ways, it makes you an enemy of the country. He says, I am the president. You go against me, you're being unpatriotic. Well, that's a line of bull. That is a total line of bull. Going against Trump, you are being a patriot. Going against Trump, you have the good of the country at heart. Working to get rid of Trump, you are very definitely a true American patriot. And what has he done? Well, we saw film clips of a rally that Bernie had, and some jerk up on the balcony raises a Nazi flag. And when people start moving toward him, he drops the flag and runs, typical coward. Under Trump, the neo-Nazis have sprung up all over the country. The Ku Klux Klan is revived. Any African American that would support Trump, they're not being true to their race. They're not being true to their people. They're not being true to their heritage. We need a change in leadership because of where we're standing in the world. Until this jerk came along, we were world leaders. Well, we no longer are. China has more or less replaced us economically. And the guy that's more or less calling the shots doesn't live in Washington, he lives in Moscow. His name is Vladimir Putin. Trumpy is his puppet. Putin pulls the strings, Trumpy dances. He doesn't mind criticizing our allies, but he's buddy-buddy with our enemies. and our potential enemies. The dictator, North Korea, Vladimir Putin, the president of China, president of Turkey, the president of the Philippines. This has to change. Ironically, what may change it is the coronavirus that is now a pandemic. And on the news today out of Channel 3, it has finally come to Vermont. There's an individual that is being quarantined at the hospital in Bennington, who's described as being in very, very serious condition physically. The first known coronavirus individual, first known one in Bennington. Will there be others? I am sure. There are a number, I believe most of them though are from Dartmouth, who attended a party in White River, at a club in White River, and one of the individuals attending that party had just got back from Italy. And you know, Italy is under a huge quarantine because of the coronavirus. And he attended that party. Consequently, everybody there that may have had contact with him, they have to be isolated to see if we can stop the spread of this. It's amazing how quickly it has spread, beginning in Wuhan, China, and it has spread into South Korea, into Japan. This is not the time to be on a luxury cruise. I mean, look at these cruise ships now that are being tied up. The people are being quarantined aboard ship. I believe there's one that finally got permission to dock at Oakland. 19 of its crew have coronavirus. The passengers are going to be taken into isolation at something like 4 military bases around the country. And once all the passengers are unloaded, the ship has to pull out of port and go back out to sea. They're more or less like, if you remember a story years ago of a man without a country. And the story goes, and I'm trying to recall it was some time ago that I heard it and read it. But he made some statement against the United States in court. And so the sentence was that he could no longer set foot in the United States. And he was put aboard a ship. And that ship, when it would dock, he had to stay aboard. He could not set foot on any land that was associated with the United States. And I can't remember who wrote it, but I think, well, I don't want to say, but it was written around about the time of the War of 1812 in the early 1800s. But this is a similar situation to those folks that are now on these luxury liners. They paid a mint for it to take a nice ocean cruise on these things, and they get on them. The ships are full. They're big. They're like a city at sea. But for folks that want to get away, that's the wrong thing to do. They're just jam-packed in with a bunch of others. And there's one off the coast of Florida that cannot dock until they find some way to unload the passengers and isolate them at some of our military bases. And it is the coronavirus that is raising havoc with the stock market, as the stock market continues to plunge. And the question is, when's it going to stop its dive? Well, word is now that they're starting to get it under control in China. And if that is the case, then maybe we're seeing the beginning of the end. Certainly right now, all cautions are being taken to try to bring a stop to this. For example, you don't shake hands anymore. See somebody, you just give them a nod and a smile and tip of the hat, and that's it. But no touching. And it has brought about a number of changes, a change in customs. There's a very good chance in some cases. Colleges are out taking spring break early. In some cases, they're going to finish up the semester on television or on computers rather than go back in the classroom. Big question is with the March Madness coming up, the NCAA. Are these games going to be played before in empty gymnasiums? Or are people going to be allowed the tickets that they bought to come root for their team and so forth? Well, here in Vermont, our high school tournaments are just about over. The boys' tournament is over. The girls are in their final week. And as you know, our state champions, Division I, Rice Memorial High School in South Burlington. For Rice, it's their 16th Division I state title, more than any other school in the state. Division II, our next door neighbors in Fairhaven Slaters, 19-1 on the year, 22-1 overall, Division II state champs. Division III, we go over into the Connecticut Valley. Thetford Academy is the Division III state title holder. And Division IV, come back locally, it's the Proctor Phantoms. So those are your 4 boy champions this year. And the girls will be wrapping up this week. And then we will go from there and see what happens. As I said, on the college level, right now, things are kind of up in the air. Whether they're going to be playing these games before empty gymnasiums and just in front of the TV camera, or whether they're going to be allowed to have a full house. And I kind of have the feeling that the almighty dollar is going to win out here. And the NCAA, because this is their big money raiser, one of their big money raisers. The others are the football playoffs. And to a certain extent, the baseball and softball playoffs. But with March Madness coming up, and big payday, it's questionable whether the NCAA is going to say, well, for the good of the country, to cut down on the coronavirus, we'll play our games before empty gyms. I don't think they're going to do that. And of course, as you know, our Fibber-in-Chief is totally out of touch with what's going on. Just a few people have a runny nose, cold. You know, the seriousness of it, I don't know, has penetrated his brain yet. If anything can penetrate his brain. One thing that I read and I was really surprised about is that Secret Service, when they go down to Florida to guard the president and his family, he's been charging them room and board. $650 per man per night. And they're there putting their lives on the line to save his worthless life. And he's billing the federal government for it. Well, it's not right. It's not honest. But somehow or another, he's getting away with it. Well, I started off and I talked about the House Intelligence Committee having hearings from our intelligence services about how Russia is already involved in the 2020 elections. So what does the fearless commander-in-chief do? He sacks the number 1 and number 2 man of our intelligence services and appoints one of his toadies, a guy that was our ambassador to Germany and did a terrible job over there. He's a dummy just like the so-called commander-in-chief. And he is going to be heading up our intelligence services. So, it looks like Russia is going to have a free hand in our elections. But you know, the American people can end that by going to the ballot box and voting, either voting absentee or going there in person and voting. And let's get this country back on track. Let's save America. and you save America by bouncing Trump. With that, may Almighty God, in His infinite wisdom, continue to bless these United States of America. God love you. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week.